Mom chose my toxic stepsister over me and kicked me out, but years later, I'm engaged and his company dropped her husband's contract as a client, and now she's blaming me. I'm a 26-year-old woman engaged to my fiancé, Jeff, who's also 26. We met on a dating app 4 years ago and have been together ever since. Jeff is my soulmate, the one person who has never disappointed me. My life hasn't been easy. My parents split up when I was only 2 years old, and my dad never really bothered with me afterward. While he did pay child support, he never showed much interest in being a part of my life. My mom, who's 48, wasn't exactly a great mom either. She was more focused on her own interests than on raising me. I basically grew up with nannies and babysitters. When I got older, I realized my mom was more into her social life than being a parent. She was a freelance artist and made enough money, thanks to child support, to not worry about me much. Honestly, I think if it wasn't for the money, she would have kicked me out long ago. She never seemed attached to me and mostly just waited for me to grow up and leave her alone. When I was about 13, my mom started dating Matt, who was 50. He had a daughter my age named Jess. When they first came over, my mom stressed how important it was for me to behave well. It struck me because she'd never cared about that with my previous boyfriends. Normally, she just let me know guests were coming, and I'd hide in my room until they left. But this time, I sensed my mom was serious about this guy, Matt. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered about my behavior. It made me realize she wouldn't have even noticed me if she wasn't into him. When I first met Matt and Jess, they seemed nice, and the introduction went smoothly. Little did I know what was coming next. Matt started coming over more often, and it felt like they were practically moving in together. It didn't bother me much as long as they left me alone. I was fine with it. They became a regular presence, with Jess visiting occasionally as she split her time between her mom's and our place. At first, they either treated me okay or just ignored me, which suited me fine since I wasn't too fond of any of them. I didn't care much about my mom, so caring about people connected to her was hard. All I wanted was some peace and quiet, which I had for a while. Then they decided to move in together permanently. I wouldn't have minded, but my mom said I had to share my room with my stepsister now. I refused. That room was mine, always had been, and it was the only place I felt at peace. In that house, I had my own little corner, and I wasn't about to give up my freedom by sharing my room with someone I barely knew. When I told my mom I wasn't going to share, we had a huge argument. She threatened to kick me out if I didn't obey. I was only 14, but I knew my rights. I felt like I had to stand my ground because my mom wasn't exactly trustworthy. Plus, it just made sense. I knew she couldn't kick me out until I was an adult without getting in trouble. So I called her bluff and told her she couldn't do it. She was frustrated but had to give in and let me keep my room. Instead, she decided to transform the basement into Jess's room. It wasn't as nice as mine, but my mom worked hard to make it comfortable. When she was finished, it looked just as good as any other room in the house. So I didn't see why it was such a big deal. But that's when Jess started disliking me, and I think it had something to do with my mom announcing to everyone during the house tour that Jess had to live in the basement because I wasn't willing to share my room. I couldn't understand why she'd make such a public announcement. I still can't figure out why she did it. Maybe she wanted to make me feel guilty by announcing it in front of Jess, but it just made me uncomfortable. Or perhaps she enjoys drama and wanted Jess to know I refused to share my room, which caused tension between us because Jess didn't seem like the type to let things slide. My mom's prediction was right. Jess didn't let it go, and from that day on, she treated me like the enemy. Even though she spent half a month with her mom, the days she was with us were unbearable. She was constantly mean to me and made hurtful remarks right to my face. Let me paint a picture of the things she would say. Once, she suggested that my dad left my mom because of me, and then she laughed as if it were a joke. She'd also poke fun at my looks, especially because I was a bit chubby back then. At school, she had a group of mean girls, and she never missed a chance to join in on bullying me with them. Before, she and her friends would just ignore me, and I preferred that. We were never friends, but that was better than being enemies. What hurt the most was that I hadn't even done anything to her. She was just upset that I didn't want to share my room with her. It seemed like such a silly reason for her to hate me so much and make my life miserable. My room was my sanctuary, especially with a mom like mine. Who could blame me for wanting my own space? Besides, if any of them had bothered to get to know me, I might have considered sharing, but she was a stranger, and I wasn't comfortable sacrificing my privacy for her. I never complained to my mom or Matt because they knew and didn't care. They turned a blind eye to my struggles because I wasn't important to them. So I had to endure it and let her walk all over me. I try to stand up for myself sometimes, but it only made things worse. Our parents would intervene, and I'd end up getting grounded because, well, they favored her. She'd cry a bit and get away with it, but I couldn't fake tears like her, and I wasn't that manipulative. So I'd be the one punished while she got off easy, and I had to deal with it. Growing up there was awful, and I despised my life. When I was finally kicked out around my 18th birthday, I felt more relieved than anything else. I had endured my family's chaos for years, and it only got worse over time. Jess remained a nightmare to deal with, and our parents blindly supported her, no matter what. Over 4 years, she turned our entire high school year against me, and I was left with only a few friends who still talked to me. Everyone else despised me just because she did, and that was reason enough. It took a toll on my mental health, and I struggled in every aspect. I gained a lot of weight from binge eating, which worsened my appearance. I was overweight, battling acne, and my hair was a mess. On top of that, my grades were suffering, so not only did I look bad, but I also seemed unintelligent to everyone else. I had nothing going for me and hit rock bottom. Home life wasn't any better with Jess and my parents. My mom became increasingly unbearable, constantly comparing me to Jess, despite knowing she made my life worse. Things were bad before my mom married Matt and they moved in together, but they weren't this bad. It was disheartening that my mother didn't care about me before, but after she married Matt, things went from bad to worse. She went from being indifferent to actively making me feel terrible about myself. It felt like I was living with mean girls at home too. It was clear to me that Jess was the daughter my mother truly wanted, and I was just dealt the wrong cards. Both of them wished I'd disappear, and honestly, I wanted the same thing. My mother and Jess despised me, and Matt didn't care. With no other family besides my mother, and no contact with my grandparents, I had nowhere to turn. I didn't feel right asking friends for help, so I toughed it out at home to at least have a roof over my head and food until I turned 18. But then, a couple of weeks before my birthday, something happened, and I was kicked out that same day. It was a weekend etched in my memory like it happened yesterday, one of the most traumatic and stressful days of my life. We had recently graduated, and Jess had started hanging out with a new, older crowd. She befriended someone whose brother, in his last year of college, became her boyfriend. They'd socialize with his friends, who were all older than us. I was aware of their activities but didn't dare tell my parents, fearing it would backfire. So I kept quiet about Jess drinking and likely smoking weed. I had no interest in those things. I was already struggling with weight and grades. I didn't need more trouble. But that day, I must have left my room unlocked before showering. Suddenly, I heard banging on the bathroom door, and my mother was screaming at me to come out immediately. I quickly dressed and rushed out to see what was going on. When I emerged from the shower, my mother, Matt, and Jess were waiting in my room, wearing serious expressions. My mother produced a bunch of empty beer bottles from under my bed, and even more damning, a large plastic baggie filled with what looked like grams of weed. I knew it wasn't mine, and so did Jess, but my parents didn't know that. Somehow, she must have planted it while I was away and then told my mom. They began yelling at me, accusing me of being a terrible person. It wasn't just about the alcohol and drugs. My mom also criticized me for being a disappointment and for eating all the food. She called me a waste, convinced I'd never amount to anything and would just keep living with them, wasting their money. I repeatedly tried to explain that none of it was mine, and I didn't know how it ended up in my room, but she wouldn't believe me. She got furious when I suggested Jess might have planted it to frame me. She yelled that I was always jealous of her and would never be as good at anything, which is why I was trying to shift the blame. I was in tears, but she didn't seem to care and kept yelling. Eventually, she stopped and told me I had to leave. I was baffled and asked her where I was supposed to go. She said she didn't care as long as I left because she was fed up with me. When I insisted I wasn't leaving, she threatened to call the cops and warned that at almost 18, they'd take drug charges seriously. She didn't want an addict in her house draining her resources. She said I had to fend for myself now because she was done pretending to be a happy family with someone who didn't deserve it. I begged her not to kick me out, knowing I had nowhere else to go and no money of my own. But she remained unmoved. She gave me until the end of the day to leave, or she'd call the police herself. I was stunned by her heartlessness, and even more so by the fact that neither Matt nor Jess objected. They acted like everything was normal. After a lot of tears and pleading, I reluctantly started packing my things. Between facing drug charges and living on the streets, I preferred the latter. By evening, I was finished packing. As I left the house, nobody said goodbye, and I didn't look back either. I spent a couple of hours at the park, but it got too cold, so I decided to go to a friend's place for the night, hoping they'd let me stay. I went to my best friend Amy's house and asked if I could stay for a few days. She already knew about my parents, so I didn't have to explain much. I shared the events of the day with her, and she was shocked. She suggested her parents could help if I let them. I'd always kept the way my parents treated me secret. Even from Amy's parents, unsure if anyone would believe me. I felt uncomfortable sharing such personal details of my life with others. That day, Amy insisted I tell her parents everything, and they were just as appalled as she was. They called my mother, trying to reason with her, but she was rude and unyielding. Realizing they couldn't change her mind, they did something incredibly kind. They offered to let me live with them for as long as I needed, promising their full support. They were well off, so money wasn't an issue, and Amy was willing to share her room with me because she cared about me. I spent the next few years living with them, attending community college since it was the only place I could get into with my grades. I worked and saved money to find my own place, but Amy's parents never pressured me to leave. They made sure I felt comfortable and supported. About 3 years ago, I finally saved enough to move out. I was proud of myself and deeply grateful to Amy and her parents. I couldn't have done it without them. Even on the day I moved out, Amy's parents helped me settle into my new place and assured me I was always welcome back to visit or even live with them again. It was a turning point in my life. By then, I had shed a lot of weight, improved my health, and felt much better overall. I was also earning enough to support myself and had spent a good amount of time working on myself. I decided to start dating because I eventually wanted to get married and needed to start looking. Before Jeff, I had met a few guys, but things never progressed far. When I met Jeff, everything clicked. I realized he was the one meant for me. He was funny, cute, and seemed genuinely interested in me. When we started dating, I didn't know he was wealthy or set to inherit his family's chain of restaurants. I just liked him for who he was. It was only after a few months that he shared his family background, and I learned about his future inheritance. Some might assume that learning about his wealth could alter things for me, but honestly, he remained the same person I knew all along. Knowing about his background didn't change my feelings, and I loved him just as deeply as before. After about a year of dating, we decided to move in together, and he introduced me to his family a few months prior. I got along well with everyone, and they all liked me. Everything seemed perfect, so when he proposed recently, saying yes was an easy decision. We've been engaged for 2 months now, and everything's been going wonderfully. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I received an email from Jess. We hadn't spoken in almost 8 years, and I hadn't heard from my family since I was kicked out. I was puzzled as to why she'd reach out now, especially to make amends. Enough time had passed, and neither of us seemed interested in fixing things. So when I read her email apologizing for everything and admitting she'd been awful, I was really confused. She confessed to orchestrating everything in my room because she simply loathed me for no apparent reason. It was baffling why she would confess to it years later, and I sensed something wasn't right about the situation. The timing was suspicious, especially since I had just gotten engaged, and she likely knew about it from social media or word of mouth. Given that we attended the same high school, I decided to investigate further. After some digging, I discovered that Jess's husband owned the business that supplied plastic containers for takeaway orders to Jeff's restaurants. It was relatively easy for me to gather this information by creating a fake profile and stalking her online. Her husband's bio mentioned his line of work, which aligned with what I already knew about Jeff's business plans. I immediately informed Jeff about the connection. In the past few years, I've made a conscious effort to distance myself from my old life, avoiding following any family members online and asking friends not to update me on their news. So I had no idea that Jess had gotten married until I discovered her husband's connection to our business dealings. Upon learning this, Jeff and I decided to terminate our contract with him. The costs were high, and more significantly, I couldn't bring myself to engage with Jess again. even on a professional level. Jeff also mentioned that the quality of the products from Jess's husband had deteriorated over time, and they were already considering switching suppliers. So last week, a few days after I received that email from Jess, Jeff held a meeting with her husband and ended their contract. However, Jess seems to believe that I orchestrated this to seek revenge on her. She's been accusing me of this through emails and social media posts, despite our lack of contact for almost a decade. While I might harbor some resentment, it's not the driving force behind her husband losing our contract. A few days ago, she posted on social media stating that many clients had been dropping them lately, and this was the final blow. However, she insisted that our decision was fueled solely by spite and labeled it highly unprofessional. She even tagged our Facebook page, creating quite a messy situation. While I can't deny there was a personal aspect to our decision, she also mentioned in her post that she and her husband had been losing clients consistently. While I feel somewhat remorseful, especially considering her struggles, I believe our decision was based on both personal and professional factors. I feel a bit guilty for influencing my fiancé to sever ties with my estranged stepsister's husband, Ida. Update: Jeff consulted with his dad's lawyers, who agree that our actions were justified. We've decided to pursue legal action against them, demanding the removal of their defamatory posts and pressing charges. The truth is, the products we were receiving were overpriced and subpar, so naturally, we sought better options elsewhere. It's purely coincidental that I'm married to the owner of that business. Instead of improving their services, she chose to tarnish our reputation on social media. It's absurd that I even felt sympathy for her given everything she put me through. Your support has helped me see things clearly, so thank you all for your comments and encouragement. Update 2. Jeff and his father initiated a defamation lawsuit against Jess and her husband a few days ago. We're scheduled to meet with a court-appointed mediator soon. Meanwhile, my mother has once again taken it upon herself to defend her stepdaughter. It feels like a high school drama, but thankfully, I can ignore them now without worrying about my living situation. Despite my mother's attempts to provoke me, I've chosen to block her and focus on my own life. I refuse to let their negativity affect me. I'm engaged to the man of my dreams, and I'm about to start a new chapter in my life. I have no room for them or their drama. Update 3. Quick update for you all. We won the defamation lawsuit thanks to the relentless efforts of my father-in-law's lawyers. They were able to swiftly resolve the matter, holding Jess and her husband accountable for their actions. Hopefully, this will prompt them to prioritize their business and meet their clients' expectations. With the legal battle behind us, Jeff and I can now shift our focus entirely to planning our wedding. I'm beyond excited to marry Jeff, my soulmate. I've waited so long to find someone like him, and now that I have, I'm holding on tight.
I vividly recall the day I first encountered Alex as though it unfolded just yesterday. I found myself nestled in a quaint dive cafe, nursing the most affordable cup of coffee available, attempting to untangle the web of my scattered thoughts and aspirations. That's when he strolled in, akin to a scene plucked from a cinematic masterpiece, albeit devoid of any dramatic lighting or accompanying melodies. Instead, the atmosphere was defined by the gentle jingle of the doorbell and the lingering aroma of stale coffee, mingled with his distinct aftershave. "Is this seat taken?" he inquired, gesturing towards the empty chair opposite me with a smile capable of inducing instant infatuation. "It looks free to me," I responded, striving for an air of nonchalance, despite the flurry of excitement his unexpected presence stirred within me. As conversation ensued, it became increasingly apparent that we shared a kinship that transcended mere acquaintance. Our interests aligned seamlessly, from indulging in mindless television series to engaging in spirited debates over preferred pizza toppings. Pineapple, anyone? Fast forward, and we transitioned from casual encounters to a genuine relationship that felt as though it had spanned lifetimes. Before we knew it, discussions of matrimony were underway. Yet, amidst the burgeoning romance, the specter of drama loomed. Alex's parents, a force to be reckoned with, greeted me with thinly veiled scrutiny upon our initial encounter. Their smiles, though ostensibly welcoming, betrayed an underlying assessment of my worthiness. "So, you're the girl Alex can't stop talking about," his mother remarked, her tone tinged with a coldness that sent shivers down my spine. "Guilty as charged," I retorted, masking any semblance of insecurity. However, their insistence on a prenuptial agreement struck a discordant note. While I harbored no ulterior motives, the notion of such a contract felt inherently distrustful. "I'll sign your prenup," I acquiesced, but under one condition. If infidelity rears its ugly head, the transgressor foots the bill, $100,000. Alex's reaction mirrored a mixture of disbelief and discomfort. Yet I remained resolute. Past experiences had taught me the value of safeguarding against betrayal. We believed this compromise would quell any familial objections, but fate had other plans. One evening, nestled together on our beloved, albeit dilapidated couch, a symbol of our shared history, we found ourselves dreaming of a future beyond our means. Italy beckoned, its allure irresistible despite our financial constraints. "Think about it, Alex," I enthused, envisioning the culinary delights and artistic wonders awaiting us. However, reality reared its pragmatic head. Our bank account screams backyard camping, rather than romantic Venetian getaway, he quipped, punctuating his words with a playful squeeze. Undeterred, I proposed a strategy of thrift and sacrifice, teasingly targeting his beloved video games as potential casualties. Our banter echoed the essence of our relationship. Dreamers grounded in the practicalities of everyday life. In the midst of mundane chores and playful banter, the topic of starting a family surfaced, a prospect both exhilarating and daunting. "Emily, we need to talk about starting a family," Alex broached, his voice tinged with uncertainty. The weight of the conversation hung in the air as we navigated the uncertain terrain of parenthood, finding solace in the unwavering support of one another. How daunting could it be? I chuckled, a blend of nerves and affection coloring my laughter. Famous last words, babe. That's how it was with us. No matter the challenge, we tackled it hand in hand, even as Alex's mother began dropping not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren at every opportunity. We maintained our united front. "Emily, darling, when will you give me some grandbabies?" "Time isn't standing still, you know," she'd remark, her tone sugary but her message anything but. I'd plaster on a smile, biting back retorts, and Alex would interject, "Mom, give it a rest, will you? These things take time." Yet, as the months passed, pressure mounted, not just from his mother, but from within. Our desire for a family clashed with the harsh reality of infertility. Ever since Judy, his mother, discovered her newfound hobby of tormenting me, our home transformed into a battleground, her weapon of choice a razor-sharp tongue. One Sunday lunch, as we gathered for what should have been a tranquil meal, Judy barged in uninvited, her presence casting a shadow over the room. "Well, isn't this quaint?" she began, dripping with sarcasm, her gaze sweeping over our modest spread. "Emily, dear, I can see you've been slaving away in the kitchen all morning," she remarked, a smirk dancing on her lips. Attempting to diffuse the tension, I offered a feeble smile, urging her to take a seat. But Judy wasted no time before launching into her assault. "You know, Emily," she began, her voice laced with condescension, "Mrs. Henderson's grandson was just born. It got me thinking, when are you and Alex going to give me some good news?" Heat flitted my cheeks, a mixture of humiliation and indignation burning within me. I sought solace in Alex's gaze, only to find him engrossed in his plate, a feeble attempt at avoidance. "Mom, come on," he muttered weakly. But his lackluster defense only fueled Judy's relentless tirade. "Alex, dear, I don't mean to be cruel," Judy continued, "but you're not running a charity here. You work hard for your money. Why waste it on Emily if she can't even fulfill her basic duties as a wife? A cleaning service and a cook would be far more efficient, don't you think?" Unable to contain my frustration any longer, I spoke up. "Judy, I am trying my best here. It's not like I don't want to have kids. And as for the house and my cooking, well, I didn't realize marriage was a service contract." But my words fell on deaf ears. Judy remained steadfast in her judgment, her criticisms cutting deeper with each passing day. She scrutinized every corner of our home, disparaging my appearance and undermining my role as a wife. With each visit, her comments grew sharper, her disapproval more pronounced. "Is that what you're wearing?" She'd sneer. "A wife should dress to please her husband. No wonder Alex is always exhausted. He has to come home to this." I attempted to defend myself, to reason with her, but it was futile. Judy had made up her mind, and nothing could sway her perception. And in that moment, the realization dawned upon me. I was fighting this battle alone. No matter what I said or did, Alex's stance, or lack thereof, remained the most painful blow. Each night, after Judy's departure, we'd engage in heated arguments. "Why won't you stand up for me, Alex? She's walking all over us, and you're just letting her," I'd plead. "Emily, she's old, set in her ways," he'd respond. "What do you want me to do? Kick my own mom out?" But it was clear this was more than just about Judy's disapproval. It was about us, our marriage, and whether we were strong enough to stand together or succumb to Judy's criticisms. As the days turned into weeks, I realized this wasn't merely a phase. It was a full-blown siege. If we didn't act soon, there might not be anything left to salvage. The strain extended beyond the home front. Alex himself began behaving oddly. It wasn't the typical stress from work. It was something deeper, something that twisted my stomach into knots. It began with the phone calls. Alex, who had always been transparent, suddenly started stepping out of the room every time he received a call, always from the same caller ID, John from work. One evening, trying to keep my voice casual, I asked, "Who's John from work?" Alex flinched, a telltale sign of unease. "Oh, just a new guy at the office. Lots of questions, you know," he replied, but his evasiveness only fueled my suspicions. Then there was his sudden interest in his appearance. Gone were the days of graphic tees and worn-out jeans. Now it was all crisp shirts, slacks, and cologne. "Since when did you care about smelling like a department store?" I teased. "Just felt like changing things up. No harm in that, right?" He replied a bit too quickly. The late nights at work became a regular occurrence. "Another long one, babe." He'd text, promising he wouldn't be late, but the clock would tick well past midnight before I heard his keys in the door. Try as I might, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That's when I made the decision to hire a private detective. It felt like something out of a bad TV show, but I needed to know for sure. The evidence arrived in a plain brown envelope. Photos of Alex with another woman, their intimacy undeniable, their conversations captured in a recording, leaving no room for doubt. Sitting there, the evidence spread out before me. I felt a cold realization settle in. This was it, the proof that could anchor me in a stormy divorce, should it come to that. But I kept it all a secret, a painful burden I chose to carry alone. I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I needed a plan, a way to navigate the wreckage of our marriage with my dignity intact. The following days were a blur. Alex continued his charade, and I played along, the perfect wife with a smile plastered on my face and a heart breaking silently. But then, one day, as I passed by Alex's office, their voices caught my attention. Alex and Judy discussing me. And what I heard changed everything. I stood there, rooted to the spot, a mix of shock and anger boiling inside me. They were planning my exit from this family as casually as one would plan a grocery list. The hurt ran deep, but it sparked something else in me, a burning desire for revenge. They thought they could use me, discard me at their convenience. I'd show them I wasn't just some pawn in their twisted game. A few days later, during a family dinner that felt more like a farce than a meal, Judy brought up her upcoming birthday with the same smirk I had come to despise. "So, Emily dear, what are you planning for my birthday? Something special, I hope?" she inquired, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I met her gaze, my face a mask of calm. "Actually, Judy, I was thinking of throwing you a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. A night you won't forget," I replied. Her eyes lit up with greed, and she exchanged a quick, satisfied look with Alex. They thought they had me cornered, but little did they know I was already 2 steps ahead. "Emily, that sounds delightful. Just close family, you know, keep it intimate," Judy insisted, her voice saccharine. Of course, Judy. It'll be our pleasure, I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The weeks leading up to Judy's 70th birthday felt like a slow march towards D-Day. Every smirk from her, every indifferent shrug from Alex fueled my resolve. The plan was simple yet bold. Host a lavish dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant under the guise of a loving gesture, then drop the bombshell. But like any good plot, the devil was in the details. The tension at home was palpable the night before the party. Alex, oblivious to the storm brewing, was casually lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Everything's set for tomorrow?" he asked, not looking up. "Oh, you could say that," I replied, my tone belying the turmoil inside. The day arrived, and as guests filled the opulent dining room reserved for Judy's celebration, the air crackled with anticipation. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline of what was about to unfold. As we all settled in, the meal proceeded with forced mirth. Laughs were shared, stories exchanged, and then, as the dessert plates were cleared away, the waiter approached with the final act of the evening, the bill. Without missing a beat, I handed over my card, the gesture unnoticed by most. It was then Alex, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, decided to drop his bombshell. "Emily, I think it's time everyone knew. I'm tired of this of us. I want a divorce," he declared. The words hung in the air, a toxic cloud suffocating all other noise in the room. Before I could even process the full weight of his statement, Judy piped up, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "Well then, since that's out in the open, I think it's best you leave, Emily. We're celebrating family tonight, and well, you're no longer part of it." The room went deadly silent. Every eye was on me, waiting to see how I'd crumble. But I didn't. With a calm I didn't feel, I stood, nodded, and walked out without a word. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I made my way home. By the time I reached his apartment, a plan formed. I packed my essentials, the numbness giving way to a cold resolve. This was it, the end of one life and the start of another. As I zipped the last suitcase, my phone started buzzing, a relentless, insistent vibration that I initially ignored. But curiosity got the better of me. Judy's voice screeched from the other end, demanding I fix the payment issue. The sweet irony of it all. In my preparations for the inevitable, I had secured my exit strategy. I stood there, rooted to the spot, a mix of shock and anger boiling inside me. They were planning my exit from this family as casually as one would plan a grocery list. The hurt ran deep, but it sparked something else in me, a burning desire for revenge. They thought they could use me, discard me at their convenience. I'd show them I wasn't just some pawn in their twisted game. A few days later, during a family dinner that felt more like a farce than a meal, Judy brought up her upcoming birthday with her trademark smirk. "So, Emily dear, what are you planning for my birthday? Something special, I hope," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Actually, Judy, I was thinking of throwing you a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. A night you won't forget," I replied, meeting her gaze with a mask of calm. Her eyes lit up with greed, and she exchanged a quick, satisfied look with Alex. They thought they had me cornered, but little did they know I was already 2 steps ahead. "Oh, Emily, that sounds so delightful. Just close family, keep it intimate," Judy chimed in, her voice oozing fake sweetness. "Of course, Judy. It'll be our pleasure," I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The weeks leading up to Judy's 70th birthday felt like a slow march towards D-Day. Every smirk from her, every indifferent shrug from Alex fueled my resolve. The plan was simple yet bold. Host a lavish dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant under the guise of a loving gesture, then drop the bombshell. But like any good plot, the devil was in the details. The tension at home the night before the party was palpable. Alex, oblivious to the storm brewing, was casually lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Everything set for tomorrow?" he asked, not looking up. "Oh, you could say that," I replied, my tone belying the turmoil inside. The day arrived, and as guests started to fill the opulent dining room reserved for Judy's celebration, the air was thick with anticipation. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline of what was about to unfold. Judy, ever the queen bee, basked in the attention, lavishing in the luxury of her surroundings. "Oh, Emily, you got done yourself. This place is exquisite," she exclaimed, her voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. As we all settled in and the meal proceeded with forced mirth, laughs were shared, stories exchanged. Then, as the dessert plates were cleared away, the waiter approached with the final act of the evening, the bill. He leaned in discreetly, informing us the dinner cost was $33,000. Without missing a beat, I handed over my card, the gesture unnoticed by most. It was then Alex, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, decided to drop his bombshell. "Emily, I think it's time everyone knew. I'm tired of this of us. I want a divorce," he announced, his words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. Judy wasted no time in adding her poison. "Well, since that's out in the open, I think it's best you leave, Emily. We're celebrating family tonight, and well, you're no longer part of it." The room went deadly silent, every eye on me, waiting to see how I'd crumble. But I didn't. With a calm I didn't feel, I stood, nodded, and walked out without a word. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I made my way home. The finality of everything that had happened washed over me in waves. By the time I reached what used to be our shared home for the last time, a plan had formed. As I stepped through the door, the air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Alex and Judy were there, looking like they'd been arguing. "You've got some nerve showing up here after last night." Alex spat out, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. "Ungrateful wretch. You've embarrassed us in front of the whole city," Judy added, her voice sharp and unforgiving. But my mind was made up. I tossed the divorce papers on the table, the photos of Alex's infidelity on top. "You should be more concerned with this," I said, my tone steady. The color drained from Alex's face as he picked up the photos, his mother peering over his shoulder. Their outrage turned to shock, then to panic as they realized the extent of what I had. "And let's not forget the prenup, shall we?" I continued, my voice cold, final. "You cheat, you pay. $100,000 to be exact." Judy's face twisted into a snarl. "You wouldn't dare. You can't do this to us." "Oh, but I can, and I will," I replied, my tone unwavering. The begging turned to pleading, their words a desperate scramble to salvage what they could. But my mind was made up. In the end, Alex had no choice but to borrow the money from his parents to pay me. As I left that house for the last time, check in hand, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. After everything, I used the payout from Alex to put a down payment on a small but cozy place of my own. Life's quieter now, and I like it that way. Every once in a while, the grapevine tosses a juicy bit my way about Alex and Judy. But these days, it's just another piece of someone else's story. Life's simpler, quieter, and infinitely sweeter on this side of chaos.
I looked at the video playing on my phone and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was footage from our home security cameras showing our bedroom. I have an app on my phone that lets me see what's happening at home when I'm not there. In the video, I saw my husband with another woman. They seemed very close, like more than just friends. Then, I heard their voices. "You sure she doesn't suspect anything?" "Yeah. I've been following your instructions exactly. She has no idea. It's going perfectly. I can't believe it." They laughed together. Then they playfully got onto the bed. I couldn't believe it. The woman with my husband was actually my own sister. "My name is Nancy Hadley. I'm 50 years old. My husband, David, is turning 55 this year. We've been married for 20 years and we don't have any children. We used to have a comfortable life because we both worked. But things changed about 10 years ago when David was diagnosed with early onset dementia. As time passed, David's memory problems got worse. He started forgetting important meetings with clients and even how to do his job. Work became really hard for him, and everyday tasks became a struggle. He'd forget where he put things, how to dress himself. And he'd often get lost and bump into things because he couldn't remember directions. Once, he even left the kettle on, which nearly caused a fire. So David and I decided to ask my sister, Anne, for help. She runs a care home, so we trusted her advice. We took David to a hospital she recommended for tests, and that's when the doctors told us he had early onset dementia. Because of this, David had to stop working, and now we have a caregiver from Anne's facility come to our home twice a week to help out. Nowadays, I'm the one bringing in the money for our family, working hard every day, I said with a sigh. Nancy, how's David holding up? It was the day our regular caregiver, Ms. Johnson, came over. Annie came along with her. And you came too. He's your husband after all, so I'm worried too. Ever since we started relying on Anne's help, she would often come over before I went to work. She's been looking after David like a brother ever since we got married, because she always wanted a big brother when we were younger. She was really upset when David was diagnosed with dementia, even though she was supposed to be busy with work herself. I really appreciate her checking in on us like this. I'm so grateful to Anne and Ms. Johnson for helping me take care of David while I'm at work. If I didn't have my job, we'd have money problems, so I'm really thankful for them. But they can't come on weekends, so I'm the only one taking care of David then. I'm working during the week and looking after David on weekends, and I hardly have any time for myself. I didn't realize it before, but I must be really tired, I explained. A nurse who knew me from the hospital where I took David for his checkups noticed how tired I looked. Mrs. Hadley, taking care of your husband is tough, but you need some time for yourself to rest. You're right. I know that. I could ask Anne and Ms. Johnson for help if I really needed it, but I don't want to bother them anymore. Oh, by the way, there's a new nurse here who used to work at a dementia hospital in New York. Maybe she can offer some help. See, there she is, the nurse pointed out. When I followed the nurse's gesture, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was Amy, my best friend from college. Amy looked just as surprised as I felt. We hugged each other tightly, overjoyed to be reunited. Amy, who used to play softball in college, still looked sharp with her neat short haircut. Nancy, you look exactly the same. And you haven't changed a bit, Amy. I'm so happy to see you. Amy shared that she had waited for her kids to grow up, ended her marriage, and come back to our hometown. Just tell me when you're free for a coffee, she suggested. When David finished his test and came out of the examination room in his wheelchair, Amy seemed taken aback. Oh, this is my husband, David. It feels like forever since we got married. Yep, it's been quite a while, I agreed. Amy, crouching down to David's eye level in the wheelchair, stopped for a moment. Is everything okay? I'm sorry, David. We met at your wedding once. Really? I'm counting on you for future care. Thanks in advance. David smiled at her and replied. Amy seemed to be studying David with a thoughtful expression. Maybe seeing my confusion, she stood up with a smile. I've looked after many patients like your husband before. So, if you ever need advice, I'm here for you. I think I can help, Amy offered. Yeah, I'll definitely count on you. Thanks, Amy. We waved goodbye. After that, I bumped into Amy several times. Like when I went to pick up David's medicine or when his health worsened. Each time, Amy looked at me with worry, but I pretended not to notice and shrugged it off. A few months after reconnecting with Amy, David and I went to the hospital together. Just as David was called in for his examination, I heard someone call my name. When I turned around, there was Amy, looking serious. Amy, is everything okay? David just went in for his exam. Can we talk for a moment? Yeah, sure, Amy replied, leading me to a counseling room. Nancy, how are you managing with David? And are you worried about me? Thanks, I began, discussing David's recent health and how the constant caregiving was affecting me physically. Amy listened closely, and I thought she was simply concerned about my well-being. But then she said something unexpected. Actually, Nancy. What she told me next was hard to believe. About a week before we met again, Amy started, recounting a shopping trip where she saw Anne with a man she recognized. Anne's face was familiar as my sister, but Amy also thought she recognized the man. When Amy approached and Anne introduced him as her boyfriend, it wasn't until we met again at the hospital that I realized it was David, your husband. It all seemed so confusing. That's really surprising. No wonder you seemed puzzled at the time, I remarked. Amy explained that she had seen Anne and David together in town a week before we crossed paths again. However, David didn't seem to notice Amy's presence at all. I looked quite different then. I had long hair and wore glasses. That might explain why he didn't recognize me, but still. Also, there's something else bothering me, Amy continued. She noticed that David's behavior at the hospital didn't match someone with dementia. It felt unnatural, almost like someone pretending to have dementia. The man I saw in town was walking confidently, speaking clearly. He seemed perfectly healthy. Could there have been a mix-up? Maybe you mistook him for someone else? I don't think so. You know, David has those distinct moles under his right eye, right? The man with Anne had them too. It's kind of a distinctive feature for a guy. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about your husband like that. Amy apologized, realizing her comment might have been inappropriate. But it's true, David does have those moles. It's not common to find someone else with the same face and moles in the same spot. So could it be that David has been pretending to have dementia for 10 years and is having an affair with Anne? It was a shocking idea, but Amy seemed sincere. Honestly, I don't think this hospital is very good, Amy confessed. The doctors here aren't great, and I've heard some bad rumors too. Doesn't it seem odd that they have so many patients? So, I really think you should get David properly checked to see if he really has dementia, Amy said, looking serious. Amy's words struck me deeply. I went to a big store and bought a home security camera. I placed it in hidden spots in the living room and bedroom to secretly record what was happening while I was at work. I set it up to watch on my smartphone and checked in during breaks. To my surprise, David's behavior on camera was different from what he showed me. He didn't seem confused or lost. He was living quite normally. Plus, when Miss Johnson, who had asked to care for David, arrived, there was no sign of her taking care of him. I also discovered that Anne had been visiting my house frequently while I was away. Their conversations were clearly recorded on the footage. You're not getting caught pretending to have dementia, right, David? Anne asked. Yeah, pretending not to know the date or where things are is working perfectly, just like Anne suggested. Acting like I can't write or go outside, and mixing up day and night, seems to be fooling Nancy. She's trusting, so she won't suspect a thing. And as for Miss Johnson, she's fine. She's a single mom and needs the money. I've been paying her more, and she's staying quiet, David explained. They laughed together, flirted, and then went to the bedroom. I was stunned when I saw the footage. I couldn't believe my own sister and husband were scheming behind my back. But the proof was right there on the camera. I felt lost, confronted with the undeniable truth. A few days later, I felt the need to speak with Miss Johnson, who had been looking after David. When I reached out to her, she said she could meet the following Saturday. I went to her apartment and showed her the footage. She looked defeated and apologized tearfully, admitting, "What you see in this footage is the truth. I've been lying to you all this time, and I'm truly sorry. I don't have a license, and I was struggling to find another job. Anne offered me a job with good pay, so I went along with her plan." Despite her need for money, Miss Johnson felt guilty for assisting Anne in deceiving someone. Because of her guilt, I was able to obtain her testimony. She also gave me copies of receipts, daily reports, and her diary from that time. No matter how desperate I was for money, what I did was wrong as a human being. I'm deeply sorry, she repeated her apologies. With Miss Johnson's evidence and testimony, I decided to gather more proof. After speaking with a few other involved parties and hearing their accounts, I consulted my lawyer and chose to confront David and Anne at the place where they were having their affair. On a typical weekday, I pretended to leave for work as usual and waited near my house. When Anne arrived, and it seemed like the right moment, likely when they were occupied with each other, I returned home and caught them in the act. They panicked, unable to escape, and I spoke coldly. "I know everything now, David." David's expression shifted from surprise to guilt as he looked at me. "I heard you lost interest in your job," Cap pushed aside, "and began to dislike your work. A colleague told me. You were telling your coworkers, there's nothing left for me here. Nancy is earning well. I want to quit and live a relaxed life." Seeing my composed demeanor, David started confessing hastily. "It wasn't my idea, it was Anne who tempted me. She suggested we pretend to have dementia, and you take care of us while you're at work. We could meet as much as we wanted. Even Miss Johnson was hired by Anne to create an alibi." His words seemed to shift the blame onto Anne, portraying himself as a victim. But Anne's reaction was explosive. "What on earth? David was just as involved in the plan, and now he's trying to dodge responsibility. That's cowardly." "Shut up. You're the one who pushed me into this. I just went along with it, David fired back. My heart grew colder as they argued, completely exposed. I couldn't bear to witness this any longer. That's it, both of you get out. I decided to take drastic action. I threw them out of the living room window, along with their scattered clothes from Anne's purse, then shut the window. Despite their banging and pleas for explanation, I closed the curtains and ignored them. When they wouldn't stop, I sent a firm message on WhatsApp. Be quiet. If you don't leave now, I'll call the cops. Suddenly, they fell silent. Their constant visits and messages on WhatsApp grated on my nerves in the following days. So, I sold the house and moved to a weekly rental apartment. When David was diagnosed with dementia, I had changed the house title to my name. David, now retired, couldn't pay the mortgage anymore, and I made the change beforehand to avoid complications with decision-making authority in his condition. Selling the house unexpectedly fetched a good price, allowing me to buy an apartment with the saved money. Though I hadn't anticipated this situation, past Nancy had done well. I filed for divorce from David and claimed a fair share of assets. It wasn't about whether he could pay or not. It was a statement of "you did this to me. I'll never forgive or forget it." After divorcing me, David remarried and now lives in Anne's house. However, it seems their relationship isn't going well. My assumption is that they were swept up in the excitement of their affair. But once they got married, reality hit them. They can no longer just be lovers living together. They have to face the ups and downs of married life, and it must be tough for them. Even if they consider breaking up, both of their parents have passed away, and the house we used to live in has been sold. They have no family to rely on and nowhere to escape, so they're left to deal with everything on their own. Frankly, I couldn't care less. I believe they got what they deserved. Thanks to Miss Johnson's revelation, Anne's facility lost its license and was shut down. It turns out the facility wasn't making enough money to repay the loans they took out when they opened, so Anne now has a lot of debt. It seems like a fitting punishment for a sister who stole her own sister's husband. As for the quack doctor who gave the fake diagnosis, he faced consequences too. After the incident, his staff, including Amy, quit one by one, making it impossible to keep his clinic open. It turns out he was issuing false medical reports for profit, just like he did for David, and this led to his downfall. Learning the truth shocked me. I realized how outrageous some doctors can be. But I also had to admit my own fault. I was too trusting. I took my sister's word and the quack doctor's claims without questioning them. According to Amy, I'm too kind and trusting. I don't like to doubt people. But now, I'm reflecting on that. I realize I need to be more skeptical and think for myself. Amy seems to have found a new job at a large general hospital in the neighboring town, and she's doing really well there. Her experience from working in a New York hospital is highly valued, and she's already earned the trust of her colleagues. She seems to be enjoying her work a lot. On Amy's recommendation, Miss Johnson also started working at the hospital cafeteria, which is great news. Amy's eyes light up whenever she sees my puppy playing with a ball. I brought him home about a month ago, and he's become my precious companion, comforting me after long days at work. Since I got him, Amy has been visiting my apartment more often. She claims it's because he's so cute. But I know she's also worried about me, even if she won't admit it. Even though I've lost my husband, I'm grateful to spend this wonderful time with my best friend. Being single and enjoying the company of another woman doesn't sound so bad after all.
Leave, you useless old ladies who can't even clean properly. My husband and I, who were living with our eldest son and his wife, were giving $3,000 to help with expenses every month. But his wife would often insult us with hurtful words and make life difficult for us. We were fed up and angry. We didn't want anything to do with her anymore and decided to get back at her someday. My name is Susie. I'm 62 years old and work part-time while also taking care of our home. I live with my husband David, who is the same age as me. David works in an office and is a kind and serious man, so we have a stable income and rarely argue. Our son, Lawrence, is 32 years old. He's just like his dad, kind-hearted and responsible. After finishing university, he got a job at a private company and is working hard. 2 years ago, he married a woman named Emily, whom he met at work. However, it turned out that Emily was actually a very mean person. When we first met her, she appeared to be serious and nice. Lawrence assured us that she was hardworking at her job and had a good relationship with her bosses. Emily is 6 years younger than Lawrence, and although we weren't sure if they would get along, we trusted Lawrence's judgment. After they got married, Lawrence and Emily moved into their own apartment. Emily promised to take care of all the household chores so Lawrence could focus on his work. Lawrence seemed appreciative of her help. He often said, "Thanks to Emily taking care of everything at home, I can concentrate on my job. I'm grateful." My husband and I believed that our son had chosen a good wife. But Emily's true nature began to emerge gradually. We had a family gathering for New Year's, and when I saw Emily, I didn't even recognize her at first. She looked completely different. The last time I saw her, she had black hair and wore minimal makeup, appearing reserved. But now, she had transformed into a bold woman with pink hair, wearing loud bracelets on her wrists. She seemed like a whole different person. My husband, David, and the rest of our family were surprised by Emily's drastic change. Lawrence tried to smooth things over. "I'm sorry if this caught you off guard." I was also surprised when I came home from work one day to find Emily like this. But she manages the household well, and we don't have any problems. Plus, Emily is a full-time homemaker. Can we overlook this? After hearing Lawrence's explanation, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Well, if Lawrence is fine with it, then so am I. I was just taken aback by how different Emily looks now. It's not fair to judge someone solely based on appearances, and it's not my place to complain. My family seemed to agree with my sentiment. Later, we all had a good time drinking together until Emily caused a scene. She got extremely drunk and started hurling insults at everyone around her. "You dare to defy me?" I once took down 3 classmates at once back in middle school. It became evident that she had a tendency to become aggressive when intoxicated. She even directed hurtful words at me and David, yelling, "Stop clinging onto life needlessly, you old pests. Nobody is pleased that you're still alive." Her words cut deep. There's a limit to what's acceptable, even under the influence of alcohol. David looked furious, and Lawrence was visibly shocked. "Hey, even for a drunken conversation, you've crossed the line. Apologize." However, Emily didn't even listen to Lawrence. "You dump all the chores on me, then have the guts to lecture me, a weakling like you. I could take you down in a heartbeat." Emily kept on with her verbal assault, causing chaos and trouble for everyone around. Eventually, she passed out from the alcohol and the tension eased, but the mood remained sour. Everyone was furious with Emily. Then one of the relatives brought up Emily's earlier claim about defeating classmates. Was she a troublemaker in the past? They asked. "No," Lawrence replied. "Emily graduated from a public university. I always thought she was a serious person." But the relative remained doubtful. "Do we have any proof she's been on the straight and narrow? Maybe we should dig into Emily's past to see what kind of person she really is." I agreed with the idea. "It might be worth looking into," I said. Lawrence promised to investigate further. Since Emily had no living parents and few ties to her relatives, he decided to hire a private investigator. The investigation uncovered that Emily had been quite rebellious during her middle school years and even led a group of troublemakers. She was so infamous that even the local troublemakers followed her lead since she was in 9th grade. Concerned about her future, Emily started to put on a more serious facade. Despite graduating from a public university, she remained connected with her rowdy group of friends. Even now, when Lawrence was at work, Emily would invite these troublesome friends over, causing disturbances that annoyed the neighbors. It became clear that Emily was hiding her true nature. She was indeed a troublemaker. Frustrated by this behavior, Lawrence brought up the idea of divorce. However, Emily reacted with tears and pleading. "I'm sorry. I'll change and be more serious. Please forgive me. I need you, Lawrence. Please don't leave me." She even reverted to her old appearance and deleted her friends' contacts from her phone right in front of Lawrence. She apologized to the relatives she had upset during the New Year's gathering and repeatedly called me to apologize. Seeing her efforts, Lawrence began to reconsider his decision. As a result, Lawrence and Emily decided not to divorce and opted to continue their married life. Since Lawrence was the one married to Emily, my husband, and I felt it wasn't our place to interfere too much. So we respected Lawrence's decision. When I saw Emily again at the family summer gathering, she seemed to have become a more serious person, and I hoped things would be fine from then on. However, one day while I was at my part-time job, I strained my back while lifting a heavy object. The pain was so severe that I couldn't move. My colleagues rushed me to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with a significant back strain and advised to rest. When I called Lawrence to tell him about it, he suggested something unexpected. "Why don't you come and live with us? Both Emily and I, along with Dad, could take care of you. At your age, incidents like these might happen more often, and it would be better if we were there to help." As I pondered the idea, it seemed like a sensible solution. Once my back pain had subsided, my husband, Lawrence, Emily, and I sat down and discussed the idea of living together. We all agreed it made sense, especially considering our spacious single-family home. With no space issues, Lawrence and Emily moved in with us, and we began our shared living arrangement. Initially, everything went smoothly. Emily took on half of the household chores, which lightened my load significantly. My husband and I contributed financially, providing around $3,000 each month to cover expenses. Although my part-time job limited my financial contribution, I wanted to ease the financial strain on Lawrence and Emily as much as possible. However, Emily's behavior started to change gradually. She began claiming she wasn't feeling well and started pushing more of the household responsibilities onto me. Initially, I believed her and took on the extra chores, but I soon noticed inconsistencies. She appeared perfectly healthy, eating hearty meals and even going out for leisure activities all day. Feeling perplexed, I confronted Emily gently, expressing my concerns. "I hate to question this, but are you truly unwell? You seem energetic and spend a lot of time outside." Emily's response was a fierce glare. "Why are you doubting me?" she snapped. "If you keep this up, I'll give you a piece of my mind." I was taken aback by her coarse language. It was evident she felt no remorse. She was likely only pretending to change to avoid losing Lawrence. Emily, sensing my shock, scoffed, "Are you scared, Aria?" "Well, get used to it. I've played the quiet girl for too long. It's time for me to be myself." "You're aware of the consequences if you continue, right, Emily?" It seemed Emily had used intimidation tactics before, perhaps during her school days. This behavior had carried over into adulthood, where she could manipulate others to get her way. While I couldn't deny feeling afraid of Emily, I hadn't lived 62 years to be pushed around. Holding my ground, I warned her sternly, "If your behavior crosses the line, it could be considered a crime, you know? I'm not here to obey your orders like a robot. If you push too far, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities." Emily appeared surprised by my unexpected response, but she quickly fired back, "Shut up, old woman. I'll never forgive you." Her outburst startled David and Lawrence, who rushed to see what was happening. They were both home since it was their day off. After briefly explaining the situation, David and Lawrence frowned. It was decided that the four of us would discuss the matter. "Diva." David addressed Emily firmly. "Firstly, apologize to Susie." However, Emily refused to apologize. Instead, she crossed her arms defiantly. "Why should I apologize to an old woman? I thought Susie would handle the household chores, so I agreed to live together, but my workload hasn't decreased as I expected. It's only gotten worse." Emily's next words were even more shocking. "No matter what anyone says, I won't change. From now on, you'll all do as I say. Oh, but Susie and David are useless. You two old hags can leave since you don't even contribute to the household chores." Her words ignited a fire within me. I've had it with this woman. I resolved firmly to seek revenge. My usually calm husband seemed equally furious, his face flushed with anger. "Should we leave now feeling the same?" he asked. "Or should I distance myself from Emily immediately?" I nodded in agreement, saying, "Yes, let's go." My husband and I swiftly packed our belongings and left without delay. Although we said we were moving out, we couldn't take large items like dressers, so we planned to return for them later. Lawrence mentioned he still needed to talk to Emily, so he chose to stay behind. My husband and I headed to a budget hotel for the time being. We didn't own another house, and we didn't want to burden our friends, so we opted to stay there until we found a new place. The next morning, Emily began bombarding my cell phone with calls starting at 8 a.m. Initially, I considered ignoring them, but her persistence was relentless, with 20 calls in just 1 hour. Though I regretted not blocking her number sooner, I felt a twinge of curiosity about her intentions, prompting me to answer once. "Hello, is this Susie?" Emily's voice sounded unnaturally sweet on the other end. Instantly, I sensed mischief brewing, and frankly, it gave me the creeps. From her serious demeanor to her sudden shift to a cutesy persona, I couldn't help but wonder how many faces Emily could wear. Regardless, one thing was clear. I couldn't trust her, no matter which version showed up. Realizing the futility of continuing the conversation, I simply replied, "No, thank you," and promptly ended the call. I blocked her number and barred her from all messaging apps to prevent further contact. My husband, observing my actions, followed suit. As a united front, we decided to cut off all communication from Emily indefinitely. Later in the afternoon, Lawrence called me. "Mom, I've divorced Emily. I left the house early this morning and just submitted the divorce papers." He explained that when he had informed Emily of his decision the previous night, her response had been dismissive. "Try if you can." With no hesitation, Lawrence proceeded with the divorce. Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Staying with someone like Emily would never lead to happiness. I shared with Lawrence that Emily had called earlier, acting strangely cutesy. Lawrence's expression soured at the mention of Emily's behavior. Back when Emily was rebellious, she would resort to acting cute to smooth things over with her boyfriend whenever things got awkward. She's incredibly naive if she thinks that tactic will work now that we're all adults. His sentiment resonated with me completely. Emily's been cheating too. What, really? I was genuinely taken aback. The thought that she would add infidelity to her already despicable behavior was beyond belief. Her claims of illness seemed increasingly dubious to me. She appeared perfectly healthy and went out far too often. Suspecting there was more to her story, I decided to hire a private investigator. The results were shocking. Emily had been cheating with an unknown man. Lawrence even provided photographic evidence showing Emily kissing a young man in public, his green hair making him stand out. I warned Emily that I pursue legal action against her, and I fully intend to. I'll also seek damages from her affair partner, Lawrence informed me. As I examined the photos he sent to my phone, Emily's nonchalant attitude in response to the accusations puzzled me. Then why did she call me? I pondered aloud. Who knows? Maybe she wanted to know where I was after I moved out. Emily never expected me to leave. She thought if she acted tough and intimidating, I'd stay, Lawrence surmised. But now that I'm gone for real, I think she panicked and tried to win me back. I sighed deeply. Regardless of her motives, I had no desire to aid someone like her. I hoped she would experience the full weight of loneliness on her own. After some time, my husband, Lawrence, and I managed to secure a new apartment where we could all live together. Initially, we contemplated evicting Emily from our old house and returning there. But considering its size and potential vacancy in the future, we deemed it more practical to sell it off. Lawrence agreed, expressing his willingness to part with the property. "Living there isn't a necessity for me. Selling it sounds like the best option," he remarked. As for Emily losing her place, it was of little concern to us. With the help of relatives, we returned to the old house to retrieve our belongings. To our dismay, Emily greeted us with a smug grin, suggesting that we resume living together. I realized I can't bear loneliness. Wouldn't it be better for us all to live together again? Plus, I want to save money and avoid paying Lawrence any alimony, she proposed audaciously. Her bold request ignited my simmering anger. If you're going to make a request, at least do so humbly. This isn't a matter for jest. No matter how you plead, I won't entertain it, I snapped. David, my husband, interjected with a cold tone. We're selling this house, so leave promptly and fulfill your obligations to Lawrence. I could never forgive you. Stop attempting to reignite our relationship. Lawrence echoed his sentiments firmly. Emily's flirtatious facade crumbled at his words. Lawrence has a stable income, so I initially thought marrying him would allow me to relax and become a housewife. But now, there's no ulterior motive. I truly love Lawrence. And of course, I need both of you, Susie and David, Emily insisted. However, her words did little to quell the seething anger within us. Mine, David's, and Lawrence's, only serving to stoke the flames further. In that tense moment, a previously silent relative, who had been observing the situation, couldn't remain silent any longer. They interrupted Emily with a firm voice. "Emily, you are a despicable woman. If you have so much to say, why don't we settle this with a fair fight? You seem confident about your strength." With a hint of intimidation, the relative revealed their physical prowess, reminding Emily that they had competed in a national karate competition. This relative in their 30s was well known for their strength. and we had called them in case Emily decided to cause trouble. Sensing the imminent threat, Emily recoiled. No, I don't want to fight. Once you leave, don't ever bother Susie and the rest again. Leave quickly, but before you do, offer a proper apology, the relative warned in a low voice, exuding an intimidating presence. Emily, subdued by the imposing atmosphere, acquiesced with a whimper. Emily's sudden change in demeanor caught us off guard as she swiftly replied, "Yes, I understand. I'll leave immediately. I'll leave all my large belongings here. I'm truly sorry," she groveled. "Good riddance." Packing her belongings and departing, the relative smirked. It was evident that Emily's tough facade crumbled in the face of those she perceived as stronger. As David, Lawrence, and I watched her retreat, we couldn't help but burst into laughter. With the nuisance finally gone, our moving preparations proceeded seamlessly, and we successfully relocated to our new home without any trouble. Following her departure, Emily rented an apartment and began living alone. True to Lawrence's warning, he filed for alimony, which Emily and her lover promptly paid, likely due to the involvement of a lawyer. It appeared that Emily couldn't stand up to someone with greater power, as my relative had predicted. Since then, I've kept my distance from Emily, but I've heard about her activities through various sources. News reports and conversations with acquaintances have painted a picture of Emily's life following her departure. Initially, Emily depleted most of her savings to fulfill her alimony obligations. With plans to marry her former affair partner and rely on his income, she was left in the lurch when he severed all ties. Desperate for stability, she attempted a job at a private company only to quit abruptly after clashing with her boss. In a shameless bid for financial support, she approached me, my husband, and Lawrence at our workplaces, but we steadfastly ignored her pleas, causing her to eventually give up. Facing mounting debt and rejection from her former associates, Emily's desperation led her to assault one of her gang members in a fit of rage, resulting in her arrest and subsequent imprisonment. My husband, Lawrence, and I couldn't help but feel that she had reaped what she sowed. Emily had a history of troublemaking, never showing any remorse for her actions. It seemed only fitting that she face the consequences of her behavior behind bars, where she could hopefully reflect on her choices. In stark contrast, my husband, Lawrence, and I were enjoying peaceful, contented lives. The three of us lived harmoniously together, and we even had plans for a trip on our next extended weekend. Our apartment offered the convenience of easy cleaning and proximity to the station, making it a wise choice for our new home. We were determined to continue cherishing our tranquil existence as a family of three. "Hey Mary, sorry to bug you at work. What's up? I couldn't catch you yesterday because you were pretty elusive, so I thought I'd track you down. Nicole pointed you out to me. You probably already know, but I'm seeing John. I'm Mary, 35, a nurse at the biggest hospital around. Mom of 2 boys, ages 3 and 5, and John's my hubby. He's 5 years my senior and works as a doc at a nearby clinic. He used to be at the hospital, but with the kids, he switched to a clinic with no night shifts. I could easily lay off work with John's job, but house chores don't quite suit me, so here I am, juggling nursing and parenting. Crazy, right? Up early, sorting lunches, breakfast, laundry, dropping kids off, and then off to work. But hey, I prefer it this way. John, on the flip side, strolls into the clinic at 9, so he's a late riser. By the time he's up, we're out the door. He wraps up his clinic duties and heads home around 9 in the evening. By then, I'm beat, having handled dinners, baths, bedtime routines, you name it. But I still manage to whip up dinner for John. Not that I mind really. He's not much help around the house, but it's better that way. If he tried, I'd probably redo everything. Thanks for dinner, Mary. It was delicious as always. He always says that, and it warms my heart. How about a trip to the zoo this Sunday? Sounds fantastic. The kids will be thrilled. On his days off, he takes them out, being the cool dad. At the zoo last Sunday, the kids were ecstatic, running around like mad. Seeing them happy makes me happy. That's what it's all about, right? Here you go, Mary. Huh? He hands me a cute cell phone charm with a blue penguin on it. It matches the one on his phone. Then he shows me his phone, and there it is, the matching charm. I blushed a bit, feeling like we were back in high school, but it warmed my heart nonetheless. Thanks. It's a tad embarrassing, but I'm happy, I replied. You know, penguins are pretty loyal creatures. Some spend their whole lives with the same partner, John remarked. making me chuckle. I couldn't help but think perhaps we'd be like those penguins, sticking together through thick and thin, but who knows what the future holds. One day, I managed to leave work on time and rushed out of the hospital's bike parking lot, headed for the daycare. "Are you Mary?" An unfamiliar young woman approached me. "Yes, that's me," I confirmed, curious. She introduced herself as Nicole, expressing her gratitude for John's support. Her sudden appearance caught me off guard. She was strikingly beautiful with long hair, not someone I knew well. "Are you here for a checkup today?" I asked, puzzled. "No, just passing by. Sorry if I startled you," Nicole explained before leaving. Her presence left me uneasy. What could she possibly want in the bike parking lot, meant only for hospital staff? That evening, I asked John about Nicole's visit. "A woman named Nicole greeted you today at the hospital. Who is she?" I inquired. "Huh, she's a nurse at my clinic. I'll ask her next time," John replied, seeming surprised. His eagerness to end the conversation left me feeling distrustful. I encountered Nicole again about 2 weeks later, this time outside our house. It was when the daycare called, informing me that our eldest son had a fever and needed to be picked up. As I biked home with the kids, I spotted a figure waiting in front of our house. I immediately hit the brakes, pulling my bike to the side of the road. Though they were a bit distant, I could unmistakably recognize John and Nicole. I dialed John's number just to confirm. "Hey Mary, what's up?" "I'm pretty swamped at work right now," he answered, even though he was clearly standing in front of our house. "I'm sorry, our eldest son has a fever, so I'm heading home. Thought I'd let you know," I explained. "Got it. I'll try to wrap up early today," he replied before hanging up. The two figures in front of our house then headed toward the clinic. I waited for a while before heading home. Luckily, despite the fever, my son seemed to be in good spirits, so there wasn't much cause for concern. But as they say, it's better to be vigilant. After ensuring he was settled with his favorite cartoon and some snacks, I took a moment to collect myself. The image of John and Nicole kept haunting me. I didn't want to entertain doubts, yet the suspicion of infidelity crept in, and I found myself gripping the penguin charm on my cell phone, as if seeking reassurance. In the evening, as promised, John rushed home and showed genuine concern for our son. He was such a devoted family man. Surely he couldn't be having an affair. At least, that's what I desperately wanted to believe. "Mary, is something wrong? Did you notice something when you came home this afternoon?" John asked, his demeanor uneasy. No, nothing. It just seemed like the chair was in a different position," I replied, feeling my suspicions growing stronger in the face of John's evident discomfort. "I thought maybe you came home for lunch." "No, I didn't come home." "Maybe it's just your imagination," John chuckled, quickly diverting his attention to the newspaper. "Just my imagination, huh?" I let it slide for the moment but went to bed with an uneasy feeling, our conversation lingering in the air. The next day, our son's fever had subsided, so I dropped him off at daycare and returned to work. While busy at my job, the head nurse informed me of a visitor. Wondering who it could be, I headed to the designated lobby and found Nicole waiting there. "Hello, Mary. Sorry for interrupting you at work," she greeted me. "What can I do for you? I saw you hiding yesterday and thought I should say hi, so here I am," Nicole explained. I noticed her change in tone from our first meeting, now irritatingly flirtatious. Despite clearly being over 20, the way she spoke in public was rather off-putting. "John doesn't like older women like you. He said he prefers young girls like me, so I was thinking it's probably best if you step aside. You get what I'm saying, right?" "Not really," I replied, puzzled. "John and I are dating. You get it now. Look, here's the evidence," Nicole declared, opening her smartphone to show me a picture of them together in a hotel room, both wearing robes and looking content. Was his recent business trip a lie? Seeing my stern expression, Nicole smirked with satisfaction. "Now you get it, right? Hurry up and get a divorce, old lady." Having said what she came to say, she cheerfully left the hospital, seemingly content with herself. I felt as though a decision was being pushed upon me, yet I had already resolved myself to it. There was no room for doubt. It was merely a matter of the moment arriving sooner than expected. Taking swift action, I informed the head nurse that I was feeling unwell and left work early, also requesting leave for the following day. Though she seemed puzzled by my sudden uplifted spirits, I managed to secure her approval and promptly headed towards my destination. The confrontation was set for tomorrow. The next day, I found myself seated in the director's office of the clinic where John worked, with my father, who also happened to be the director, sitting across from me. He scrutinized the photos and documents I had laid out on the desk, his expression grave. Yes, from the moment I first met Nicole, I had enlisted the services of a detective agency to investigate John's infidelity, aiming to dispel the unease I had been feeling. Fortunately, I had the means to do so. Regardless of the outcome, I viewed it as an investment in securing a positive future for my family and had commissioned a month-long investigation. Despite Nicole's limited contact, the evidence gathered over the past 2 weeks was damning. It revealed that she had accompanied John on his recent business trip, sharing the same room. Furthermore, even in their daily lives, they spent considerable time together. They had been meeting almost every day during the breaks between John's consultations, even at our own home. My father's expression soured, but he lifted his gaze with a determined look. "Mary, what do you want to do? Consider the children and weigh your decision carefully," he urged. "I'm filing for divorce," I replied resolutely. I empathized with my father's plight, but my resolve remained unshaken. As I delivered my decision, he sighed, asking for a moment before dialing John's extension on the internal phone. After a brief interval, John, oblivious to the situation, entered with a smile upon seeing me. "Mary, you're here. Are you off work today?" His smile faded as he noticed the spread of photos on the table, his face draining of color with each passing second. What is this?" he stammered, his eyes fixed on the incriminating evidence before him. "John, you've been having an affair with Nicole. With this much evidence, denial isn't an option. We're getting a divorce?" I stated firmly. "A divorce? Why? This was just a fling. What I value is you and our family," John protested, his voice tinged with desperation. "Nicole came to disrupt my work, claiming you weren't interested in older women like me," I countered. "That's not true. You're beautiful and you're not old," John interjected, bewildered. My father promptly called for Nicole, startling her. "Doctor, you call for me." Nicole entered, visibly pleased to be personally summoned by the director, though her expression faltered upon noticing the tense atmosphere. "Nicole, could you explain these pictures?" my father inquired, gesturing towards the evidence on the table. Nicole's brows furrowed momentarily before she composed herself, wearing a smug smirk. "I apologize, doctor. John and I are dating. Of course, I know about Mary, but I could support him as a housewife. This way, he can concentrate on his work and be a devoted father," Nicole declared confidently, seemingly mistaking my father for John's own. John, visibly shaken, appeared at a loss for words while my father turned to me with a solemn inquiry. "Mary, have you decided to break up with John? I'll ensure you're compensated and will take good care of the children, so please don't worry." I couldn't help but chuckle at Nicole's dramatic speech, though she didn't seem amused. Instead, she appeared slightly irritated. "It's not severance pay, it's alimony. And since I'll be the one raising the kids, I'll need child support from John," I clarified matter-of-factly. "Well, that can't be helped, but I'm glad you agreed to the divorce. Now I can be with John," Nicole continued, seemingly on a roll. "Stop it," John muttered under his breath, but Nicole, caught up in her momentum, didn't seem to hear him. "Well then, as soon as you're ready, could you leave the house?" Nicole's words were abruptly halted as John grabbed her shoulder to silence her. Her surprised gaze met his, and John spoke up. "Nicole, I'm sorry. It was just a fling. My family is important to me, and I can't be with you," he confessed, causing color to drain from Nicole's face. "Why? You told me you were divorcing her to marry me. You said you'd make me the wife of the future director, and I believed you." "I don't understand," Nicole protested, her confusion evident. "You told me you're not into older women like her. You said how lonely you are with her always at work and not at home," she continued, her tone pleading. It felt like I was witnessing a messy breakup unfolding before my eyes, and my impatience began to grow. "That's enough. I'm filing for divorce from John. I'll be seeking alimony from both of you, and John, you'll need to pay child support too. That's all," I declared, attempting to conclude the conversation. My father, understanding my temperament, chuckled and interjected, "Well, since my daughter said her piece." "Wait, did you just say your daughter?" John interrupted, visibly stunned. "Yes, Mary is my child and John is my son-in-law," my father clarified, causing Nicole to panic. What happens if he's no longer there? Can't he live in that big house anymore? Nicole panicked, realizing the implications. Mary, I'm truly sorry. John suddenly fell to his knees, bowing deeply to me. Nicole, now realizing she was nothing more than a fling, was left stunned. I can't ask for your forgiveness, but could you possibly give me another chance? John's desperate bowing likely stemmed from the fear of losing his job. However, no matter how deeply he bowed, I couldn't find it in me to forgive him. Besides the affair, there was another reason why forgiving John was impossible for me. That's impossible. Do you recognize this? I pulled out my cell phone and showed him the blue penguin charm. John's face paled, confirming his guilt. Yesterday, when John showed me the photo at the hospital, I had been elated. We had matching charms, and he had shared with me the significance of penguins mating for life. I cherished the blue penguin charm he had given me, but now I noticed something crucial. Nicole also had the light blue charm on her phone. Yes, Nicole confirmed. John bought it for me. Admitting defeat, John confessed to buying it. That's why it's impossible. We should break up. Nicole has the exact same one, not just a different color. That tells me enough about your feelings. I can't forgive you, no matter what. Please, Mary, John pleaded, but my father intervened, expressing his outrage at John's betrayal and Nicole's disruption of clinic discipline. As a clinic director, I must punish both of you, my father declared. Be prepared for that. I'm so sorry, but please let me keep my job, John pleaded. We'll go through lawyers from now on. You both can leave for today, and from tomorrow, you'll be on paid leave. You don't have to come to work. Wait, I don't understand, I interjected. John, you're a doctor. Can't you work elsewhere? Quit this small clinic and let's start over. Please, Nicole, let's break up, John added. I never imagined losing my family or happiness. Are you freaking serious? You deceived me. I lashed out, my father intervening to silence the bickering between John and Nicole. Despite John's past insistence that family was paramount, his actions have betrayed us. The thought of returning to the house where John and Nicole had apparently spent every day together filled me with dread. So, I requested to stay with my parents for a while, taking my children with me. Arriving at their house, a sense of relief washed over me. Exhaustion consumed me, and I fell into a deep sleep, only to awaken in pitch darkness. Startled, I checked the clock, realizing it was midnight. My cell phone was illuminated with numerous missed calls and text messages from John. I couldn't bear to hear his voice, so I read through his apologies and excuses for the affair. Among them, I found a plea for my father's intervention, claiming remorse. A cynical laugh escaped me. It seemed John's remorse was more about securing his position at the clinic. Fury and pity overwhelmed me, leading me to forcefully tear off the penguin charm from my cell phone and discard it. A wave of sadness engulfed me, tears flowing freely even in the dead of night. My mother, awakened by my sobs, offered her comforting presence, staying by my side throughout the night. Family's warmth enveloped me, and as I yearned to build a family like this, my tears continued to flow. The next morning, I awoke feeling lighter. Though my mother expressed concern, I've always been one to bounce back quickly. I had completely cut off all emotional ties with John. That very day, I met with a lawyer introduced by my father and swiftly arranged for alimony and child support. I left the rest to the lawyer and resumed my daily life. It took longer than expected, but eventually, the lawyer informed me that the divorce was finalized. John had put up a fight, unwilling to let go of both the marriage and the clinic. However, he eventually agreed to a settlement after realizing he had little chance of winning in court. Once the divorce was finalized, Nicole and her parents discovered the news and pressured John into marrying her, citing our child. I had demanded substantial alimony, and John was left with almost no money after paying the lump sum for child support. Nicole was furious at the turn of events, neglecting housework, which led to constant arguments between them. The lawyer kept me informed of these developments. Moreover, although my father now ran a small clinic, he had a vast network from his previous role as a department head at a large hospital. News of John's situation spread quickly in the area, making it challenging for him to find employment as a doctor elsewhere. Whether he would leave town or find a different job was of little concern to me now. My father decided to rent out our former house to someone he knew, respecting my desire not to return there. I resolved to build a new home for my family of 3 with my own finances. Until then, I planned to stay at my parents' house to care for my children. Despite my young age, I jokingly mentioned to my parents that I wondered if there might be someone else out there for me. They laughed, teasing me about my impatience. My name is Olivia, and I'm a 32-year-old housewife. My husband, Liam, is 34 and works an ordinary office job. We've been married for 8 years and have a precious daughter named Ava, who is 6 years old. Ava is incredibly adorable, and both Liam and I are completely smitten with her. I have an older sister, Emma, who is 3 years older than me. She recently turned 35 and went through a divorce due to a personality clash, becoming a single mother to her 4-year-old son, Noah. One day, we planned to go to the zoo with Emma and Noah. Unfortunately, I caught a cold at the wrong time. When I tried to cancel the outing, Liam kindly offered to take the day off from work, not wanting to disappoint the kids, even though it meant he and Emma would be alone together with the children. I didn't think anything of it. However, one day when I was walking through the shopping district after running errands, I happened to see Liam and Emma sitting together in a cafe. I wondered why they were together, but as it was almost time for Ava to come home from her after-school program, I headed home, still feeling uneasy. That night, when Liam came home, I asked him about it. He explained that it had started raining and they happened to meet, so they went to the cafe to wait for the rain to stop. He seemed calm and nonchalant, so I trusted him at the time. But after that day, Liam started coming home late more frequently. He also began asking for more money, claiming he was short on cash. On his days off, he went out more often, and whenever Emma visited our house, their interaction seemed more familiar than before. Suspicion began to creep into my mind, even though our relationship with Ava remained as strong as ever. Then an incident occurred that made me realize something was amiss. Emma came over as usual and asked if I could take care of Noah for about a week. A friend had invited her on a trip to Hawaii, and it was difficult to bring Noah along. Emma pleaded, saying she needed a break after being so busy. I understood how hard it was for her since the divorce, and though reluctant, I agreed to help. As Emma's trip approached, Liam told me he would be away for a while on a business trip, visiting multiple areas over several days. I thought it was a tough coincidence, but I was shocked when I learned his departure date. It was the same day as Emma's trip to Hawaii. Was this really a coincidence? Liam's increasing phone use and secretive behavior made me more suspicious. When Emma visited, their interaction seemed unusually close. On the day of Emma's departure, she arrived early in the morning with Noah. The moment I held Noah's hand and immediately noticed something was off. His hand was unusually hot and his body felt feverish when I lifted him. I didn't need a thermometer to know he had a high fever. Emma, doesn't Noah have a fever? I asked. Yes, he's been running a fever since yesterday. It hasn't gone down yet, she admitted. What? We have to take him to the hospital right away. Surely your son's health should be more important than a trip, I insisted. But then Emma said something outrageous. So I'm counting on you. What? You're leaving your child here while he has a fever? I was incredulous. I have no choice, do I? I made the promise a long time ago. It's ridiculous to pay a cancellation fee, she replied. That's not the point, is it? Isn't Noah the most important here? I argued. Of course he's important, but I'm not worried because you're here, Olivia. Take good care of him for me, Emma said. Wait, Emma. Despite my attempts to stop her, Emma left. I couldn't believe it. Noah was suffering from a high fever, and she left him in my care. Noah seemed to be really struggling, probably because of the strain of moving while having a high fever. I quickly laid him down on the bed and placed a cold, wet towel on his forehead. While I was preparing an ice pillow in the freezer, Liam woke up. Liam, it seems Noah has a fever, I said. Really? Is that so? He replied sleepily. Emma is terrible. She's going on a trip, leaving Noah in this state, I fumed. Well, she had planned it long ago, right? She probably can't cancel at this point, he reasoned. You too, Liam. Poor Noah. If you feel that way, you should take good care of him, I said. Liam, can't you do something about your business trip? If Noah has some contagious disease, he might pass it to Ava. I'll take care of Noah, so I want you to take care of Ava, I pleaded. As a mother who loves her daughter dearly, I reluctantly agreed. Work is important, but surely our daughter is even more important. However, my expectations were betrayed. What? That's impossible. You should know that, I exclaimed. If you're worried, just leave her at your parents' house, Liam suggested. Even if you say that my parents are busy with work and your parents' house is too far away to go now, I countered. Then there's no choice, Liam replied. Well, all we need to do is let Noah sleep. It'll be fine, he said casually. Say that so casually. What do you want me to do then? I retorted. It's time. I have to go. I'll be going then. Liam hurried off, leaving me behind. I quickly called my parents. They couldn't take a day off work on such short notice, but my mother promised to leave early and come pick up Ava as soon as possible, which gave me some relief. While waiting for my mother to arrive, I kept Ava confined to her room, feeling sorry for her. Meanwhile, Noah's condition seemed to be worsening. In addition to this fever, he started to cough in the early afternoon. When my mother arrived early from work, I immediately took Noah to the pediatrician. On the way to the hospital, my heart ached seeing Noah suffer even from the car ride. The doctor diagnosed it as a common cold and prescribed an antipyretic, advising me to monitor his condition closely. However, I was warned to call an ambulance without hesitation if his fever rose further or if he became dangerously delirious. I'm sorry, Mom, I whispered to myself, overwhelmed with concern for Noah's well-being. I suddenly had to ask you to take care of Ava. Don't worry about it. More importantly, I'm worried about Noah. My mother assured me over the phone. Noah was as dear to my parents as Ava. After finishing the call with my mother, I felt an urge to call my husband's company. I needed to know the location of his supposed business trip in case of emergencies. The response confirmed my worst fears. He was on paid leave. Looking up at the sky, a bad premonition began to feel real. I opened my husband's laptop, which I had never seen before, and examined his search history. The destination was Hawaii, and all arrangements, plane tickets and hotel reservations, had been made by him. I recognized the name of the hotel. It was where my sister had mentioned staying. My sister and husband in Hawaii at the same hotel at the same time. Such a coincidence was implausible, not even 1 in 10,000. The fact that my husband, who claimed to be on a business trip, was on paid leave in Hawaii was abnormal. Out of curiosity, I checked my sister's social media. There were no new posts, but her recent ones showed her often with someone. The clothing visible in the photos looked all too familiar. What turned my suspicion into certainty was a picture where the person with her wore a watch that I had given my husband, not expensive, but distinct in design. This person, clearly not my husband, appeared in multiple photos with her, wearing the same clothes and watch. The possibility of coincidence was virtually zero. Then I found the conclusive photo in an album labeled Window Shopping. My sister was reflected in a shop window, and at the edge of the photo, unmistakably, was my husband. My sister, elated, had likely posted the photo without realizing he was in the reflection. With trembling hands, I saved all the photos. There was no doubt now. My sister and husband were having an affair. They were together right now, and it felt like everything fell into place. The foundation I had built with my husband was crumbling all at once. I called them repeatedly, but each time, an automated voice message played. It seemed they had turned off their phones. Noah's fever still hadn't subsided, and seeing his pained expression, anger began to well up inside me. Despite a young child suffering so much, despite my own tough situation, at this very moment, my sister and husband were likely laughing and enjoying their trip to Hawaii. Could there be a more cruel story than this? Shaking with anger, I tried to think about what to do next, but that would have to wait. First and foremost, I needed to wait for Noah to recover. Yet there was no sign of his fever decreasing. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse. I was shocked when I took his temperature minus 107 degrees. Children are susceptible to high fevers. Ava had once had a fever of 104 degrees, but never this high. Why wasn't the fever reducer working? Noah was completely exhausted, and any movement seemed to cause him pain. Desperate to suppress the panic threatening to overwhelm me, I was just considering calling an ambulance when my smartphone buzzed. "Mommy," Noah murmured weakly, his face contorted in pain, calling out for his mother. "I can't forgive them. I'll never forgive them," I vowed silently, my vision clouding with rage. Just as it seemed my anger would consume me, Noah's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse. A week had passed since then, and despite my sorrow, today was a clear day. I found myself staring blankly at the wide blue sky, tears streaming down my face. I had lost count of how many times I had cried, yet my tears showed no signs of drying up. Ava's hand trembled in mine. And as I lifted her up, I could see my parents also in tears, comforting her. Other family members and friends gathered, all sharing in our grief. Everyone, without exception, was in tears. Suddenly, my smartphone vibrated. I set Ava down and glanced at the display. It was my sister's name. "Hello," I answered hesitantly. "Oh, Olivia, it's been a while. I just got back from Hawaii. I'm at the airport now, and I'm going to pick up Noah next. Thanks for looking after him." My sister's voice came through the line as if from another world. I uttered a phrase as if whispering, "Our dear has gone to heaven." A single tear, which I thought I had under control, spilled over. Unable to comprehend my words, my sister asked back in a bewildered voice over the phone, "Heaven? What are you talking about? That makes no sense." "So our loved one is in heaven while you were enjoying your trip to Hawaii," I said, struggling to contain my emotions. "I don't understand what you're saying," my sister replied, sounding confused. "You'll understand when you get here. The funeral is over, and we're now at the crematorium." "What? The crematorium?" My sister's voice was filled with shock and disbelief, and the phone call abruptly ended. No. My sister rushed out of the taxi, desperation etched on her face. She called out his name and looked around frantically, but Noah wasn't there. "Where is he?" "He's not here." "Of course he isn't," I said softly, pointing in the direction of the crematorium. Though modern crematoriums don't emit smoke like the old ones, there was no mistaking the solemn reality. Someone was being cremated right now. "About Noah. The day you dropped him off, his fever suddenly spiked to 107 degrees Fahrenheit. 107 degrees? My sister's voice faltered. The antipyretic we got from the pediatrician didn't work, and his condition deteriorated rapidly. We called an ambulance in a panic, but no. I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. "We're in the middle of a funeral right now," I continued, spreading my arms towards the crematorium. "Hey, what's going on? What happened to Noah? Why are you here?" A man shouted, breaking the silence. It was my husband, shock and disbelief evident in his voice. "It doesn't matter why I'm here. What about Noah?" I retorted sharply. "Of course it matters." My husband's voice was strained, filled with urgency and concern. With nothing left to lose, I faced my husband, ready to confront the truth. I shouted back, "What kind of nerve do you two have to abandon your family and go on a fair trip? Noah was sick with a fever, and despite my plea for help, you ignored us and went on your trip. Are you out of your mind? What are you saying? I've known for a long time. When I contacted your company, they said you had taken paid leave. When I checked the computer, there was a reservation for a trip to Hawaii, staying on the same flight and in the same hotel as my sister. You think you can explain that away as a coincidence?" At my intense accusation, my husband was left speechless. "Olivia, tell me, is Noah?" His voice broke. "How can you ask that question now? Why do you think we're here? Why do you think we're wearing mourning clothes at the crematorium? Don't you understand?" I demanded, my voice trembling with emotion. No. My sister's scream pierced the tense air, collapsing into tears. I looked down at her with cold eyes. "You have no right to cry, Emma. You're the worst kind of person, abandoning your son to go on a trip with your sister's husband. I was so lonely all by myself. That's why. Emma's voice quivered. "So you laid hands on my husband?" I accused. "What? I did nothing wrong." "I'm not in the wrong," Emma insisted, unbelievably lashing out in anger. "I didn't choose to have a child, nor did I choose to become a single mother. When my ex-husband and I divorced, I wanted him to take custody of Noah, but he refused. So I did my best to raise him on my own. But to think Noah would? No, Emma." The one comforting my crying sister was my husband. It seemed he had no intention of hiding their affair any longer. "Don't be selfish. Our parents and I have helped as much as we can. Leaving the sick child alone to have an affair is no excuse." I lashed out at them. "You don't even realize how despicable you are. You're the worst." "Hey, Olivia, aren't you being too harsh on your sister?" "Emma is shocked because Noah has passed away," my husband interjected. "Shut up. Don't you dare act superior. Just so you know, we're getting a divorce. I'll make you pay for everything you owe, so be prepared." "What? What does that have to do with this?" "It has everything to do with this." I yelled back at him, my sister crying in the background. The situation had become a battlefield. Our parents approached us in the midst of the chaos. My sister, tear-streaked, blamed them. "Dad, "Mom, why didn't you take proper care of Noah? Why did you let this happen?" she cried out. Suddenly, a dry slapping sound echoed through the tension. It was our father who had slapped my sister's cheek. "Don't be ridiculous. You abandoned your child and yet you blame others. You even went on a trip with your sister's husband. Shameless. I feel ashamed as a father for raising you like this," he condemned her. My sister cried even harder at our father's harsh words. I contemplated slapping my husband, but before I could act, a small boy's voice cut through the turmoil. "Mom." My sister turned sharply. There he was. "No." "Noah," she exclaimed, moving towards him, but the man holding Noah quickly stepped back, out of her reach. "Hey, what are you doing, Lucas?" I demanded. The man holding Noah was my sister's ex-husband, the man who had divorced her due to their personal conflicts. "That's what I should be saying. What are you doing, leaving Noah alone? It's none of your business. Noah is my son too," he argued fiercely. I followed the prevailing opinion that a mother is better because you insisted on not sharing custody, no matter how many times. I warned you, you wouldn't let me see him, and as I feared, it came to this. You have no right to be Noah's mother. Shut up. All you have to do is quietly pay child support. I'll pay whatever it takes for Noah's sake, but you didn't take care of him. You left him alone. You didn't even know how dangerous his condition was, and you were off on a pleasure trip. On that day when Noah's condition suddenly deteriorated, I panicked and called an ambulance. I called my parents and Lucas, Noah's father. While treatment was being given after arriving at the hospital, he was quite surprised when I told him my sister was on a pleasure trip with my husband. Afterwards, Noah, who was discharged from the hospital in good health, was recuperating at Lucas's parents' house. "Wait, so Noah is safe, right?" I asked my bewildered husband, staring at the crematorium. "It's her grandmother," I explained. "Our grandmother, who was bedridden due to her advanced age, has been under care at a nursing home. She passed away from old age the other day. Even though she was bedridden, she had a clear mind and doted on her great-grandchildren, Ava and Noah. When we occasionally visited her at the facility, her wrinkled face would crinkle even more. At the sudden farewell, I, my parents, and Ava were unable to cope and just wept. Noah, being just out of illness, didn't attend the funeral. But I called my sister to this crematorium after informing Lucas that Noah was fine, since his fever had completely gone down. "You tricked me," my sister accused, staring daggers at us. We were the ones who wanted to accuse her. "I didn't hear that Grandma had passed away either," my sister shouted. "I called multiple times to tell you that Grandma had passed away, but your phone was turned off. Both of you were unreachable. Even though Grandma was kind to you, it's unacceptable to be late enough. Key, it's mocking me." "No, let's go. You'd rather be with Mommy than this man, right, Lucas?" I said firmly, trying to take Noah back from Lucas. It was Father scolding my sister who was confronting Lucas. "Are you still thinking that you can keep Noah with you even after all this? Listen, what you did was on the verge of breaking the law. It's called parental neglect. You failed as a mother. Don't think that you can ever be by Noah's side again. Noah will be raised by Lucas." "Dad, no way. We have even hired a lawyer and decided to fully cooperate with Lucas. You are no longer our daughter. Be prepared for us to cut ties, Mom." My sister's face turned pale at the disavowment from her parents. I stood imposingly in front of my sister and husband. "My husband and I are getting a divorce. Why don't you two get along? You should be fine not seeing each of your children. After all, you left them behind to go on a trip overseas." Hearing this, my husband started yelling. "Wait, Olivia, it was just a moment of weakness, just a fling with Emma. What's most important to me are you and Ava." Then my sister exploded. "What did you say? A fling? You said you don't love Olivia anymore, that you only love me." "Shut up. I love my daughter. Don't mess with me." My husband and sister resumed their quarrel. We left them arguing and departed with my grandmother's ashes. After that intense dispute, mediation ended peacefully since I had appointed a lawyer. Noah went to his father's place. I thought he would feel sad about being apart from his mother, but he was actually happy. It seemed my sister was completely non-functional as a mother. My husband and I also had our disagreements. He was stubborn, but after being scolded by both sets of parents, he deflated. The final blow came from our daughter. "I don't need daddy," Ava declared. Though only 6, she seemed to mature early and understood her father's behavior in her own way. When Ava looked at my husband like he was an insect, I couldn't help but laugh. There was no greater punishment for my ex-husband, who had adored her daughter. He now has the right to see Ava, but whether she wants to see him is up to her. So the dramatic situation came to an end. Ava and I moved back to our parents' home, living peacefully. Our parents were thrilled to have Ava around. Next year, she would start first grade, and we were excited about her school preparation. I also planned to get a job at the same time she started school. Noah visited every now and then with Lucas. His face was unrecognizably bright compared to before, filled with smiles. Meanwhile, while we were living joyfully, it seemed my sister and ex-husband ended their relationship easily. Perhaps it truly was just a fling for my ex-husband. Perhaps he was shocked at being disliked by his daughter, so he easily discarded my sister. However, his affair with his wife's sister became known in his company, and he was deemed to have character problems. He was sent to the provinces, making it even harder for him to see Ava. He deserved it. As for my sister, it seemed she lived like a hollow shell for a while, frustrated by being abandoned by everything. Eventually, she disappeared. We filed a missing persons report, but I had a feeling my sister would never be found. I've longed for children, but you're the reason we couldn't have them. My husband spat out, hurling those hurtful words at me after 20 years of marriage. In that moment, I realized I couldn't continue with him. His callousness cut deep and his mind was elsewhere, dreaming of a new life without me. It felt as if some divine eye had witnessed his cruelty. My name is Lisa, 45 years old, a secretary at a law firm. Our marriage, nearing 2 decades, had been modest and childless. Despite our shared desire for children, infertility plagued us, primarily my own struggles. I underwent treatments, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, only to face disappointment. When I turned 40, we conceded defeat. My husband's desire for children persisted, but I couldn't endure the pain and financial strain any longer. We decided to halt treatments and embrace a childless life, opting for luxury trips instead. Yet the pang of regret lingered, especially when confronted with images of children on TV or greeting cards. Even 5 years post-treatments, guilt and remorse gnawed at me. Then, a school reunion beckoned after a decade. My husband encouraged me to take a break, sensing it as a mini vacation. It felt like a temporary escape from the weight of our childless existence. I realized I had scarcely been out alone since our wedding day, my life consumed by infertility treatments. But a little indulgence now and then couldn't hurt, right? At the venue, catching up with old friends felt refreshing. "Lisa, long time no see. You look great, slimmer than before," one friend remarked. Indeed, I had shed about 22 pounds over the past decade. "Thanks," I replied with a smile. "I envy you. Since marriage and kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds, she lamented. Her words, though innocent, stung a bit. "Any kids for you?" another friend asked. "No, we couldn't," I replied, feeling the weight of the question. "Just the two of us." "Oh, sorry for asking such an awkward question," she apologized. "No worries. Let's just enjoy ourselves," I reassured, trying to maintain a lively atmosphere. As conversation flowed, a startling revelation emerged. My son was nearly caught in a marriage scam recently, one classmate shared. I was taken aback. A scam? Yes, they asked him for $20,000 for their wedding, but it fell through, she explained. "What happened next?" I inquired, intrigued. "He couldn't afford it, so he came to us for advice. That's when we uncovered the scam. The woman vanished," she recounted. "It's terrifying," I murmured, shaken by the story. "There are some awful people out there," another friend chimed in. "Really scary." "A marriage scam," I mused, shocked that such deceit could occur so close to home. Thankfully, her son had moved on with a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion continued smoothly, eventually winding down. Instead of heading to the after party, I decided to head home, reflecting on the evening's unexpected revelations. I returned to my hotel, savoring a nightcap alone. It struck me, I hadn't checked in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m. He should still be awake. Despite repeated calls, he didn't answer. Perhaps he already turned in. Well, I'd be back tomorrow, so it wasn't a pressing concern. Yet an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Was it women's intuition? Something felt off. From then on, my husband started arriving home unusually late on weekdays, often inebriated. "Hey, I'm home," he slurred one night, collapsing onto the living room floor. Are you okay? I asked, concern creeping into my voice. Shut up, I'm home. Show some respect, he retorted, his words clouded by alcohol. As I tidied up his discarded clothes, he muttered something about Alyssa. You know, if you were as young as Alyssa. Confusion gripped me. Who was Alyssa? What did he mean by his words? Before I could inquire further, he was already asleep. Could he be cheating on me? The unease I felt that day morphed into a creeping certainty. But no, my husband was a good man. It must be drunken nonsense. Yet doubts lingered, unsettling my thoughts. I tried to reassure myself, but my husband's erratic behavior gnawed at me. Weekends meant early departures and late returns, often accompanied by the stench of alcohol. It had become a pattern I could no longer ignore. You're going out drinking almost every day lately. Are we okay? I ventured one evening. Mind your own business. It's my money, he snapped back, dismissive of my concern. But we need to save for our future, I insisted. His response cut deep. Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments. That's because you're defective. Even in his inebriated state, his words stung. I could have fathomed he'd speak to me that way. As time passed, his disparaging remarks grew more frequent. Since you can't have kids, you should focus on showing affection to me, he'd say. With each selfish act, my love for him waned. Gone was the caring husband who once supported me through treatments. Would he ever return? After 20 years, I began questioning the essence of our marriage. But before I could confront him about it, he dropped a bombshell. We need to talk, he said, his demeanor serious. I returned from work to find him on the sofa, his expression grave. What's wrong? Why are you being so formal? I asked, sensing something was amiss. I want a divorce, he declared bluntly. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden? I pleaded, hoping for reassurance. But the idea of divorce had never crossed his mind before. Yes, he confirmed, leaving me stunned and bewildered. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Divorce? Had my husband been considering it all along? I confronted him, desperate for clarity. Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on? I demanded, my emotions raw. We've been together for 20 years, haven't we? Let's talk this through, I urged, hoping for understanding. But he met my plea with contempt. You're clueless, aren't you? He scoffed, his tone laced with bitterness. Confusion clouded my mind. What do you mean? For 20 years, I've wanted children. But because of you, I've been denied that chance, he accused, his words cutting deep. His revelation blindsided me. That's not fair. We decided together to stop treatments, I countered, feeling the weight of sadness and frustration. I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child, he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tears threatened to spill as the reality sank in. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say, he declared proudly, pushing the papers toward me. But his next words struck like lightning. I've already decided to remarry. Remarry? With a 20-year-old? I gasped, disbelief coursing through me. That's right. Alyssa, he confirmed, a smug satisfaction in his tone. Alyssa, the name echoed in my mind, the same name he had mentioned before. Woman's intuition, it seemed, was not to be underestimated. I felt a flicker of self-satisfaction, but I knew it wasn't the time for indulgence. Then my husband showed me a picture of his so-called adorable Alyssa. As I examined it closely, I struggled to contain my laughter. Surely, this had to be a joke. How could something like this be real? I prayed he didn't notice my odd reaction and swiftly composed myself. So, you really want a child that badly? I questioned, masking my incredulity. Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You'll agree to the divorce, won't you? He pressed, oblivious to my internal turmoil. I suppose there's no choice, I replied, feigning distress, though secretly his sheer idiocy made the decision easier. With each passing moment, the thought of divorcing him grew more appealing. It felt like divine intervention guiding me toward the right path. With a heavy heart, or so I pretended, I signed the divorce papers and left him behind. I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Surely, he would regret his actions soon enough. Time would tell. Fast forward a year after the divorce, and I encountered him on my way home from work. His appearance shocked me. Lisa, Please help me, he pleaded, his shabby appearance a stark contrast to the man I once knew. Excuse me, who are you? I asked, genuinely not recognizing him. It's me, Lisa. I need your help, he insisted, desperation evident in his voice. I hesitated, taken aback by his transformation. Long time no see, I finally managed, unsure of how to react. In that moment, I realized the tables had turned. It was now his turn to seek assistance, and I held all the cards. Please introduce me to your company's lawyer, he implored, his request a humbling reminder of his downfall. I couldn't just agree to help out of the blue. It seemed my ex-husband was facing financial troubles. I had sensed it from his appearance, but I never imagined he would change so drastically within a year. If it's your first consultation, it's free. But to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee, I explained, trying to navigate the situation. I don't have that kind of money. Please help me, he pleaded, desperation evident in his voice. Perplexed by his sudden predicament, I decided to hear him out. We found ourselves in a nearby cafe, where he began to share his story. Well, actually, he started, but before he could finish, I interjected. Did that girl Alyssa run off? I asked, a sudden realization dawning on me. How did you know? He responded, surprise evident in his voice. Just as I suspected. When you showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. She looked exactly like the one who killed a classmate's son at a reunion, I explained, recalling the warning given by the classmate about a woman named Sally, approximately 22 years old. Her age and name are probably fake, of course. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, I added, connecting the dots. Of course you knew about Alyssa, didn't you? He questioned, realization settling in. Well, I guess you could say I knew. But what happened? I inquired, eager to unravel the full story. When I pressed my husband for an explanation, this was the story he offered. About a year ago, he met a woman named Alyssa at a nightclub. My husband, who had always harbored a desire for children, seemed to have shared his thoughts with her. It was during one of these conversations that Alyssa made an astonishing offer. She could bear a child for him. Their relationship blossomed from there. He started frequenting the club almost every weekday and spent weekends with Alyssa outside its confines. In the process, he depleted $10,000 from his savings, accumulated during his single days. Despite this, Alyssa never demanded lavish gifts or expensive outings. She was content just to share a drink with him at the club. She was different, he insisted. Not like the stereotypical club girls you often hear about. She didn't care about designer goods or jewelry. She was happy as long as I was there with her. He painted Alyssa as hardworking and sincere, emphasizing their agreement not to touch each other's savings from their single days. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased, I admitted, unaware of his extravagant spending. Then my husband revealed the twist in the tale. Alyssa's true colors had emerged. I wanted to get married, but I had debts totaling about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her, I recounted, my voice heavy with regret. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her nighttime work and rarely came home. Eventually, she quit her job at the club and disappeared, taking all the money with her. How could he be so foolish? I lamented, feeling a sense of despair at having been married to such a man for 20 years. Did you make a promissory note? I inquired, hoping for some semblance of responsibility. A what? My husband looked puzzled. You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note? I pressed, frustration creeping into my tone. We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing, he admitted. So, you basically gave her the money, is that it? I asked incredulously. In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill, I concluded, my disappointment palpable. This woman must be a pro, I mused, realizing the extent of her deception. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed. So, Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished, splitting the money into two parts across 2 different years to avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So, what should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. Maybe consult a lawyer. It'll cost you though, he replied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. All my savings from my single days are gone, and the woman I loved ran away from me. I can't go back on my word to the company about remarrying after boasting about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? I thought, feeling the weight of my husband's pitiful situation. Lisa, it's my fault. Please come back to me, he pleaded. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? But his misunderstanding persisted. That matter had ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? I reminded him. You're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted, and I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. Mr. Johnson, the lawyer for my company, arrived at the coffee shop. John, over here, I called out, and my ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months now, I explained. What was it you needed advice on? As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. No, well, I think that'll be it for today, he muttered, suddenly snapping back to reality and hurriedly leaving the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor had it that his company was abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife and ignored by his ex-wife. As Mr. Johnson and I spoke later, I confessed the truth about the charade. I'm sorry for involving you in all this, I apologized. No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help, he reassured me. By the way, do you have any plans after this? Caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered, but a fresh start in my mid-40s didn't seem like such a bad beginning. Yes, I'd love to, I agreed, certain that a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling of excitement.